This week, my friend asked me to make a study table for him. I'm thinking of making this with plywood, MDF, and pine strips. The table is going to have a drawer, an open shelf, and a custom made tabletop. So I'll see you on the other side of the intro. I start to make the legs of the table first. Each leg is made of 3 by 1 pine strips. 2 pine strips will be finger jointed to make one leg. The sides of the pine strips are cleaned and made straight on the table saw. The wood has bend in it. I will correct it when I make the legs. All the legs are given thorough sanding with 80 grit sandpaper. This will remove all the imperfections and make the wood smooth. You can see the difference on the wood after sanding. To make the finger joint, I start marking every inch on one side of the leg. Then I transfer the marks to the other leg. Using a square makes the job easier. I also mark alternatively on where to cut and leave to make the finger joint. Based on the markings I made, I start to remove the material. I don't have a dado stack, so I just made several passes to make the finger joint. I sneak up on the mark first and then begin to remove the material in between. I just had to repeat this on all the 8 legs. I drop some Fevicol on each of the finger and spread them on all the sides. Then slowly started sliding one side into the other. By very gently tapping the mallet on the sides, I was able to get the joint right. Because the wood was bent, I used some clamps alternatively to hold everything until the glue dried. After the glue dried, the legs were passed through the table saw. This cleaned the glue squeeze out and the finger joints. Without changing the fence distance, I ran the other side of the leg too on the table saw. Now the finger joints looks super good. All the legs had to be of the same height, so I stacked the legs on a miter sled and cut them carefully. Now to join these 4 legs and make a frame, I had to cut a couple of more strips of pine. After cleaning the wood strips, I split them into equal halves on the table saw. To attach these strips and make the frame, I drilled some pilot holes before attaching them to the leg. I drilled holes on the shorter side pieces too. Then with glue and screw, I attached to what will be the top end of the table. It will all make sense once I finish it. And that's the last piece of the frame. I cut some pieces of pine to make the leg rest. It's going to be a cross design, so I need 2 pieces. Using the 45-degree sled, I cut V shape into the leg rest pieces. This V shape would fit between the legs snugly. For better feel, I rounded the edges. Be careful about the direction of rotation and feed the wood into the router. The round oval left a small mark, so I sanded down with the orbital sander. At At the point where the leg rest crosses to make an X, I wanted to make a half lap joint. So I cut through half the width on each piece. To attach the leg rest to the legs, I used L brackets. This scrap piece of plywood will make sure I set the L bracket at the same distance in all the legs. These L brackets are made of steel and can take up to 70 kg of weight. I position the two cross pieces to make the leg rest. With a little bit of adjustment, the half lap joint fits perfectly. Using screws, I joined these leg rests to the L brackets. Also, where the half lap overlaps, I drove in a screw to keep the joint strong. To give more strength to the leg frame, I drive in some screws from the side of the leg into the cross pieces. I first drilled a pilot hole, countersunk it, and then screwed in. Then I took some fine sawdust to hide the hole. I filled the hole with sawdust and glue till it was a little over the surface. Then after it dried, I sanded it down flush. Moving on, I make the drawer next. First, I cut the side piece. Then drill some holes to attach the L bracket. These L brackets then get screwed into the sides of the frame. To make the other side, I cut two pieces of plywood to size. Then glue them and clamp it together. The reason for two pieces is because this goes in between the legs, and for the slider to come out the full length, it needs to clear the leg. Now I can add the bottom. I draw a line to drill the holes and then attach it to the underside with glue and screw. I close the back with another scrap piece of plywood. With that, the box for the drawer is ready. Now I can attach the sliders. I used a spacer to raise the slider a bit and then screwed it into place. I did the same on the other side too. In places like this, we can use the scrap pieces of plywood lying around. I made the drawer by holding the sides in place before I screwed it together. I used glue and countersunk all the holes. To create the bottom piece, I cut some 6 mm plywood. Then drew some lines where I need to drill. I attached it with some glue and lots of screws. Now the drawer can go into its place. I pull out the extendable part of the slider and screw it into the drawer. The drawer works perfectly. To make the faceplate, I used another scrap piece. Then cut some veneer and stuck it using 3 mm tape. Then I trimmed out the edges on the table saw. To cover the end cuts, I used hardwood strips. I stuck them with glue and brad nails. Before I attached the faceplate, I put some double-sided tape. This held the faceplate in place while I pulled the drawer out, then I screwed it in place from inside. I drilled some holes to put the pull knob in place. I attached it with the screws that it came with. There is so much to tell you about this project that 10 minutes is not enough. So I split this project into 2 videos. I want to share everything that I learned in this project with you. So please click on the link below to know how I made the rest of the table.